Beau, we want to find out more about this. We're at a point in the show where we're going to take a brief break, but we want to remind our listeners that you're listening to The Secrets of Success. My name is Bill Horan. The show is produced at 90.3 WHPC at Nassau Community College. We'll be right back after this brief intermission.
Well, Jason, I've got to tell you, you're pretty much everything this company is looking for in an entry-level candidate.
Great.
Your resume isn't quite what we're used to, but you've got a fantastic work ethic.
Thank you.
And I'm impressed by how you carry yourself.
So, should we talk about the job?
What? The job? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I have no way of recruiting or even meeting you. This interview didn't happen.
It may sound ridiculous, and that's because it kind of is. There's a huge pool of talent your company is missing out on. Meet the grads of life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Man, we really could have used him.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Secrets of Success. I'm your host, Bill Horan, and today we're speaking with Beau Lotto, author of the book Deviate. Beau, what about certain biases that we have built in? If I remember from reading in your book, there's a lot of biases that we all kind of, take the easy way out when we're making a decision. We look maybe for an authority bias that somebody tells us, always do this, a boss or a supervisor. Maybe our father said, always vote for this political party or always cheer for the Rangers or the Knicks or whatever the local sports team might be. Is that a good thing or is that bad?
It's both.
Okay.
So, like most things, actually. So, what does history give us? What history gives us and what it gives your brain are assumptions and biases. And these assumptions and biases are fundamental to our survival. I mean, every time you take a step, your brain has hundreds of assumptions about that the floor is not going to give way, that your legs aren't going to give way. These are essential for our survival. And like I said, many of these assumptions and biases come from our evolutionary history. Some we inherit from our culture, from the history of that culture's interaction with the world. And a lot of them also come from our individual experiences. But the point is, every time you open your eyes and every perception behavior you create, you are constrained by your biases. And it's not that sometimes you have biases, it's that you always do. Okay? And like I said, these biases can be essential for our survival. But what was once useful may no longer be useful. So our brain didn't evolve to see the world accurately. Instead, what your brain evolved to do is to see it usefully. And these biases help us to see the world in a useful way. But because the world changes, we need to adapt to that change. And the way we do so is by changing our biases. And in doing so, what happens is you change what's possible. You change what I call your space of possibility. And what's even more interesting is that you can actually complexify your biases. You can incorporate the biases of, say, another culture, another individual. And now your space of possibility actually becomes more complex. Okay? And the only way you can do that is if you first accept the fact that everything you do has a bias. If you don't, then there's no way you'll ever question them. And the second step is to reveal what those biases are, because most of the time, we don't know why we do what we do.
Well, that's true.
and often the best person to reveal your own biases to you is not you, it's someone else. Hence the power of the diversity of groups, as one example. And also, it's also the power of the best technologies. The best technologies aren't the ones that enable us to do what we can already do faster or easier. They make the invisible visible. Right? The telescope, the microscope, they complexify our biases, our assumptions about the world. And then once we identify what those biases are, then we have to question them. But the problem with questioning is it steps us into uncertainty, especially if we question biases that define who we are as individuals. Those are the scariest biases to question because they create the most uncertainty, unless you approach it in a particular way. And science is an example of that way of being that enables people to question their biases. But what is science? Science is nothing other than play with intention.
This is just kind of so amazing. And I remember reading in your book where you said the next great innovation isn't going to be technical, but a new way of seeing. Is that already on the horizon? I mean, is that something that you know, like obviously before the cell phone came out, companies were inventing it and trying it and testing it. Is this something we're going to be experiencing in the next few years?
I really hope so, because the point of that statement is that, of course, there will be great innovations in technology, though I'd argue that the next greatest technology is the world itself, actually, because we keep forgetting that we evolved in a body and our body evolved in a world. But the point here, I just lost the thread.
We were just talking about the next innovation.
Yeah, the next great innovation is that way of being. Why? Because if I'm not able to step into uncertainty, if I'm not able to ask a question, especially a good question, to question things that I assume to be true already, then how is it ever that I'll come up with a new idea at all? How is it ever that I'll be able to adapt to a changing world? And the only way we can do that is if we enter conflict, for instance, in a different way. Right now, we enter conflict in a particular way, which is if you and I are in conflict, it's as if you're on one side of the line and I'm at the other side of the same line. We're at opposite ends. And my aim is to prove that you're wrong and to shift you towards me. And your task is to do exactly the opposite, prove that I'm wrong and to shift me towards you. Well, that situation is set up to win, but not learn. And the irony is only through conflict, to enter a situation that's different from I expect, am I able to learn. But I'm not going to learn if I'm just trying to win. So we could, however, approach conflict in a completely different way, which is instead of entering conflict with an answer and with certainty, we enter conflict with a question and with doubt. Because only then do you have the possibility of learning. And that is a seed to success.
Beau, I want our audience again to know that if they're enjoying what they're hearing and want to know more and kind of reevaluate their thought process, the book is Deviate. It's by our guest, Beau, B-E-A-U, Lotto, L-O-T-T-O. And Beau, can you tell us about that website again? Where should we look?
thelabofmisfits.com.
Again, I love that, and I hope that somewhere on the Lab of Misfits there's a way to get T-shirts and hats, because I think it's a cool designation. Now, let me ask you, when you do this with the class, how do they experience it, or with a seminar or students? Is there reluctance at first? Because we all like to rely on something. You know, I like chocolate ice cream. I like this type of shirt or that type of pen or pencil. Is there reluctance? Is it a new awakening, or do they fight you on it, or do they all of a sudden say, this is great, I'm going to do it every day?
All those things happen.
Okay.
And all those things happen within me as well, because I also have my own biases that I'll hold strongly to, and which more I'll have a cognitive bias, which is that I'll look for evidence to confirm what I assume to be true already. Right? People do that in conflict all the time. And the aim is to create that environment where asking questions is a great idea, and to challenge what you assume to be true already. And because, again, only in that context do you have the possibility of learning, but then you have to create the right, what I call, ecology of innovation in order to do so. Right? It's very difficult to do that in the context of competition, for instance. Competition is a very good biological strategy for maximizing efficiency, but it's not a very good strategy if you're trying to maximize creativity. And the fact is that innovation has two sides. It has both creativity and efficiency.
Now, Beau, I'm just wondering, an average day with the Lab of Misfits, can you take us through it? Because I could almost think you could turn anything around, eat breakfast for dinner and dinner for breakfast, or I'm making that up, and maybe it's really happening. So could you tell us a little bit what happens in that lab? Do people just come up with interesting ideas, or do you all work together as a normal company would?
Well, we work together. So our aim is to create experiences in the real world, which is where your brain makes meaning, and to create experiences that enable people to have the possibility of seeing differently. So the lab becomes basically a public space. We turn it sometimes into a theater nightclub experience, as an example.
Oh, that's cool.
So you have dancing, you have people drinking, but everything in the space is an experiment, not a demonstration. And sometimes we're doing it for the very first time. And the idea is that when people come into that space, everything's being recorded, they know it, and people really enjoy that. And we're doing experiments in a context, in a very playful context, because play is that situation where people can ask questions. And what's more is we will then give the data back to people. We call it the reveal, so they can walk away with a better understanding of themselves, as well as a better understanding of what it is to be human. And because they're actually physically part of that process, they're now embodying the information as opposed to just being told the information. Because as soon as I tell something to someone, it kind of takes it away from them. I want people to be able to discover, and especially if they discover something that we weren't aware of.
I think that's fantastic. And I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but it seems to me that this might make one of those excellent reality shows that if someone is taping it with, or setting it up for a TV show, but letting it happen just real go through, the results might be extremely interesting.
Yeah, but the way we would do it, and we are doing exactly those types of things, but then we even enter the filming as a question. So then we want the filmmaker to say, well, is there a different way I can film this? So we call this the experiment. And one of the reasons why we call it experiments is also an experiment for us to how do we create an environment that enables people to engage with these questions in a way that causes them to see the world differently the next day.
Beau, I have to cut things short, just we're running out of time, but I want our audience to remember the book is Deviate, Deviate, by our guest Beau, Beau, and last name Lotto. And Beau, once again, give us that website.
It's thelabofmisfits.com.
Thanks so much for being with us today. I think you're in a fantastic world, and I'm waiting for that reality show to watch it on TV. Thanks for being our guest. I'd like to remind our audience that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we'll continue our journey to success.